We are back with another edition of our art series. Thank you so much for joining us, Rose. You were introduced to us from Arts in the Block. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with them and then your relationship with your art.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. So I have a pretty long relationship with Arts on the Block. Actually, I sort of started, especially my public art, back in high school when I worked with Arts on the Block doing mosaic public art here in Silver Spring. So I've come full circle, and now I'm on the board, and they're a really wonderful organization. You should check them out. And I'm a full-time working artist, predominantly a mural artist, and I also do lots of printmaking, some digital illustration, and ceramics.
So what is your inspiration? Where do you get your, especially for, like I love murals. One of the things that I love to do when I go from city to city is I go look at the street art, as I call it, and when the murals on the street. So are you inside, outside? Do you do street art as well? And where do you get your information from? Because I'm completely fascinated with murals.
Yeah, I, first of all, indoor and outdoor. I really love making public art. That's really, I think that I didn't realize how much I loved making art outside until I was actually doing it. But I started my very first mural in 2014. I had an art show at a cool kind of street art style gallery, and they allowed me to paint a mural on the outside. And I just loved kind of interacting with the public, and I loved making a huge piece of art. Right. And so I started to apply for more grants and started to get more commissions and started to kind of make a name for myself painting murals. And I think I just love so much about it, but I think especially about making art for people outside on the street to kind of interact with.
Where's the intersection between art and community?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that's such a big and great question. For me, art and community are like totally connected. First of all, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without community. I think that I really respond to, I love sharing my art. And so I think that that's a big part of my inspiration. So I love showing my art. I love sharing my art. Obviously, as a mural artist, my work is very public. And I think a lot about what I'm putting outside in the world. So I think that, when art is out in the community, it has such a powerful opportunity to really say something important. So I think that art and community is really everything. And, I'm a visual artist, but I think music, poetry, dance, like the way that we express ourselves is just so critical, and I think it's supported by the community. I think it's a part of the community, so I think that they're almost one and the same.
Right. So you're new to Maryland. Tell me about that experience. Why'd you cross the, I was going to say pond, but it's not really a pond between DC and Maryland. It's more like a street. The line
Yep.
is.
Yep.
So what made you come this way?
Yeah, so born and raised in Washington, D.C., and I love DC, and I am DC, in so many regards. My family's still here. We're very connected. My studio space is still in DC, but I really wanted to put down some roots, and the reality was that I wanted to buy a house, and I just couldn't make it work in DC. I wanted to, but I just hopped right over to PG County, so I'm in Hyattsville, and I think it felt like a really big move. Even though I'm 15 minutes away from the DC border. But I know that somebody was saying that PG County is kind of like Ward 9 because it's right there. But yeah, I think it's been interesting to explore Maryland. And I think that there's a lot of great grant opportunities in Maryland for artists. I feel like there is a lot of funding opportunities, and there's a lot of artists that have moved out of DC for a lot of reasons, whether it's Baltimore or parts of PG County. So I'm just starting to build network, and as we mentioned before with community, building community around my work is really important. So I'm just starting to kind of connect with more Maryland artists, and it's been great, and I look forward to keep on doing that.
So we're a media company. We actively serve Montgomery County. We are here to give voice to the community and make sure that they understand how to use media, and we train them and give them opportunities. We're a portal, if you will, to allow them to create media and share media. But I like this series because we're talking about art, and as you say, there's this connection, right, between media and art, poetry and music, all of which we use as we're creating media. How do you think about art and media and that connection between the two?
You know, I am always excited about the ways that art is evolving. And I think that artists are constantly responding to the new kind of technology and new sort of opportunities within the art space. So, like, very into and excited about where art is going. I think there's some complicated things around like AI and lots of like, ways that digital technology and art are interacting with each other. But I think that it's really awesome when artists can have access to and be on the forefront of like being a part of that conversation around media and digital media and where it's going. I love, also artists being able to use the tools that are out there to like make their work. I use projectors for my murals, and I think that like projection and projection art is really interesting. Big fan of podcasts, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think that like the more tools that artists can have to make their work, the better. And I think that when artists can learn those tools, like the more ways that they can use to express themselves.
Do you find pressure to use social media and getting yourself out there, becoming your own marketer, if you will?
Absolutely. I do. I mean, I think that I sometimes wish it wasn't the case, but we live in a society where like social media is where a lot of eyes are. And so if I want my work to be shared, that's really where people go. And running your own business is a challenge. And one thing that I'm passionate about is like helping artists figure out how to make a living doing what they do. And so much of that as a creative is not just making the art. It's like the finances, the social media, the marketing, the putting yourself out there, the going to things, like all those different pieces. So the reality is that I have to be on social media. Sometimes I very much dislike it, but I try to just have a relationship that feels healthy to me. So only at certain times of day, only things that I feel good and comfortable about sharing and things like that. But yeah, like it or not, it's kind of the devil you have to play with, I think, to kind of really get your work out there in a meaningful way.
I love your website.
Thanks.
It features so much of your art, and it's really visually attractive and appealing. Talk to me about how you put that media together to put yourself out there and share some of your favorite pieces that I might find on your website.
Yeah, so my website, I built myself using ProSite, like Adobe ProSite, I think. Maybe it's not even called ProSite anymore. It used to be Behance. And it was kind of a pretty simple drag and drop. And I got inspired. I saw another ProSite that used GIFs. And I was like, that looks awesome. And I've taught myself a lot of different things, kind of building my business as an artist. And I think that, having a variety of things in my toolbox has really helped me be successful and kind of do this full time. So I, use Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, like all these different, I use my digital iPad to create all my designs. So I've like created a website that I thought would be sort of an interesting way to showcase all of that different type of work. Goodness, let's see. I mean, my murals, I think, are the biggest work that I've done, and I think that I really like showing that. Just yesterday, I was fixing my RBG piece, which is on U Street. I think probably the most well-known piece that I've done. It got a big tag on it, which is something that happens when you do public art. So I was there fixing that. So that's like the top of my kind of mural page. But I think I'm most excited about my sculptures. I'm just getting into sculptures, which is really fun. Making 3D works, like I'm starting to learn how to do welding and like using aluminum and steel and stuff like that. And I think to start to like pull things off of a flat surface has been really exciting. So I have some sculptures featured, so that's probably what I'm most excited about right now.
And so, I come from an art family. My father is a visual artist. It is a solitary sort of thing, right? When you're in street art, that's a little bit different. But when you're doing your sculptures and you're working with your metals and you're inside your studio, it's just you, and yet you also have to build community. What advice do you have with some artists who are really having a hard time getting out of the studio? And it's amazing that you've been able to incorporate multimedia and that you get it, but a lot of them are having difficulty. What advice do you have for them when they sit back and they say, I just want to be creative, I just want to do my art? but somebody has to see it. You got to
Yep.
get it out there. So what
Yeah.
advice do you have for them?
You know, it's a really good question, and I think it's hard. Like, I really hear that, and I think that there's just a lot of artists that, you know, they're introverted or they're solitary, and I think that there's so many artists that just make art for themselves. And first of all, I think that there's space for that, and I think that's really great, especially if, say, you have like a day job or something else where you can get money, and work for you is a solitary thing and you're not interested in sharing necessarily. But I think if you come to the realization of, I want to make a living doing this and I want to support myself doing this, I think then you have to kind of understand that there's things that you have to do in order to reach that goal of being able to make a living with your art. Right. And I think that once you're like, if I like the reason why I'm doing this, and the reason is I want to make a living, then you have to move through those things that maybe you don't like as much. Posting on social media, you know, sharing your work, putting a price tag on it, you know, those just are means to the end. Right. So I think that just like understanding that if you want to get to the end, then you have to just be realistic about what you need to do that. So like being comfortable about putting a price tag on your work, sharing that, I think can be really hard. But I think people want to support you in your work, especially your community, you know? So I think building authentic connections with your community is really important. Like, you know, I think if you love what you do and you share that, people really see that and they feel that, you know? So I think the more ways you can kind of do that for yourself, creating authentically and creating authentic connections with other people, then they're going to want to support you in any way, really.
You brought up an interesting point, and that is the price point. How did you start deciding what your worth was and where you should start pricing pieces?
Yeah. You know, another difficult question, I think it's like the art market is just all over the place. So it's like very complicated to navigate. Right. And I think it's also very personal. You know, I am an artist that makes a lot of work. I love making art, and so I produce a lot. So I think because of that, I could make my work very accessible, especially in the beginning. You know, I kept my costs low. I got a lot of like oops paint from Home Depot and worked on a lot of like wood panels and
what's oops paint?
Oops paint is like the paint that's like gone off or somebody didn't like the color, really? So it's like $1 or 50 cents or something like that. So I used a lot of really low priced material so that I could, you know, just move a lot of stuff in the beginning and then invest that back into my work. So I didn't like buy really expensive, you know, canvases and stuff like that. I worked on fabrics that I found and things like that in the beginning to when I didn't have a lot of income other ways. So I tried to really build myself up in that way. Mm-hmm. And then as I got more notoriety, it was a little bit of supply and demand. I started to understand that I could, you know, people were willing to pay a little bit more for my work. So it's always kind of like a market dance, you know, you're like, can I charge this much? And then I think that you really have to check in with yourself about what things feel good, you know? And I think that can be really hard, but if you're like, I don't want to price this at $60 because I feel like this should be more than that, you know? But maybe like it's not $10,000, you know? So I think there's the feeling aspect of it. And then I think there's the hard aspect of how long did this take me to make? Right. How much were materials? How am I going to recoup those actual costs? And just being realistic about the time it takes to do something and, you know, not losing money on when you're making art.
And then the other part of it is pulling in those grants. What advice do you have to artists to even find out where the grants are? Where's the money? Who are the people that want to support the arts? Yes.
Well, I think when I moved to Maryland, I really just like Googled a lot, like where are the Maryland grants? Like where is the money? Because like there is a lot of money in DC and in Maryland for artists. And I think that it's a lot of just like Googling and researching it, you know? And I get on a lot of newsletters. Pretty much I get emails from like anybody that's, you know, putting art out, especially locally. I'm also on like a few national calls for public art and sculpture, as well as shows nationally. And yeah, I think that those are the main things. What was your other part of your question?
Just how do you even begin the process? I think you answered it. You start researching. You start
Yeah.
researching to find out where the grants are.
Yeah, and then, I think the other thing I was going to say was that, you have to have a way that, an easy way to display your art. Like, I do think it's important to have a website that looks good.
Yeah.
As visual artists especially, people are looking at your work. So, like, things have to look, how you want them to look in a nice way. So, when I'm putting out calls for art for my studio space or gallery, and people send me their Instagram and it's pictures of like their dogs or what they ate, and maybe like every 10th thing it's something that they made. I'm like, I want to see your work. If you're going to apply for something as an artist, I'm going to want to see the work.
Right.
So I think just like making it easier for yourself also to like batch. Maybe you have a folder of like recent works and an artist statement and a bio, so that when you're applying for things, you kind of have things easily accessible.
I want to ask you a question, something I've always been curious about. You're very petite. You do these gigantic murals. How do you get up there? I mean, I know the answer is ladder.
Yep.
But as you're trying to visualize something that in your mind might be this big, and you're getting onto this large canvas, where do you start?
Yeah. Well, technically, ladders and lifts. I'm not afraid of heights, which helps.
Ooh, yeah. I couldn't do it.
I like to be up there. It's fun,
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that, like, it's like, I like to see my work that big. It's really fun. And I think it's just a great challenge. Like,
so do you like trace it first? So first it's in your mind's eye,
Yep.
right? And then it's on paper somewhere.
Yeah.
And then do you do the outline? Because now you're going to have to go up and down just
Yes.
to do the trace. And then you go in and
So-
fill the color?
Yeah, basically, I do it all digitally. So if I'm working with a client, I can use these digital tools. I superimpose the image onto the wall, and I basically present a concept, a proposal. This is what it's going to look like. Maybe I'm presenting several concepts. The client's like, I want this one. Great. And then I project that design. Maybe I translate it all into lines, depending, and then I project that at night onto the wall.
Wow.
And then I basically trace it out and fill it in.
So once again, we're using media tools. We're
Yep.
using multimedia to be able to even translate to the client what that might look like.
Absolutely.
For traditional visual artists, what advice do you have? Because they're sitting back going, oh my gosh, I have to do what?
Yeah.
Where do they start? Where do they start? You just gave them the roadmap.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? I want to do a mural.
I think that digital tools are almost essential at this point. There's some people that you can do it in analog, like you can create a grid on the wall using chalk lines and, print it out and grid it. Like, that's fine. But I think that, tools make things easier. Why not use them? Like, I think that the Procreate, like, on my iPad has been so transformative. Like, I would really recommend that to almost any artist. Like, it's so small. It's like I can basically use any brush to do anything that I want to. So it's very close to a lot of other types of media. And then I can easily upload that onto Photoshop. I know that there is a barrier. Certain like, I don't know, like age groups, like, they're not used to using these types of media. So I think you can work with somebody that is. I think outsourcing some of this stuff is really great. And yeah, I think that, knowing that there's also analog ways to do it. But I think the other thing is also just asking for help, I've learned a lot of my tools from other mural artists. I'm constantly like, how did they paint that 20-story building? How does that work? And asking them or studying their techniques. A lot of it is really just techniques. And like, we're out here, like, nobody showed me this roadmap. Like, there's not really a roadmap.
Right.
I've learned a lot of this stuff myself. Taken classes, practiced, through doing murals. Like, I have learned something through each mural. What to do, what not to do.
There was a walking mural not too far on U Street where you would go and there's the mural and then there was a QR code and you scan the QR code and then that took you to more information about what you were looking at. So it is overlaying each other. We are married together, art and media, whether we want to be or not.
Absolutely.
We are married together. Tell me the next thing that you're working on. What should we be looking out for from you?
Yeah, so let's see. I have an art studio that kind of doubles as community space. I teach classes there, and sometimes we have shows there and markets, and we're having an art market on April 15th. It's a Saturday, coming right up. And there's 11 artists that are going to be featured from Maryland and DC. So I think that's going to be really great. It's going to be kind of spilling out onto the street a little bit and the sidewalk, so that'll be really fun. And then I'm in the works for preparing a show, hopefully in May or June. Still, the details are not yet fully formed, but you can follow me on social media.
Give us your handle. Where should they follow you?
I'm at Rose Inks, Rose_INKS on Instagram. And I have a link tree there that is connected to my website. But probably Instagram is like the best way to stay updated with what I'm up to.
Well, thank you. You've given us so many jewels, so many pearls of wisdom for the artists out there. I really appreciate you coming by. And make sure you guys follow her. She is amazing. Her art's amazing. Please do community with her. Engage with her. Do community with her. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. This podcast is supported in part by the Maryland State Arts Council, an agency of the state of Maryland that plays an essential role in assuring every Maryland resident has access to the transformative power of the arts. Visit them at msac.org.